Welcome to 2025, episode 128.
Of No Room for Ponies.
And the theme for January for the next two podcasts is about service.
Specifically, customer service?
Yes.
Or,
yes.
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 Okay.
So books worth reading. I actually did a little survey to see what book is recommended to people who want to have better customer service, and actually How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie actually came up.
A good old.
So I read it. And anyway, the first couple of quotes in it, the first one says, the ability to deal with people is as purchasable a commodity as sugar or coffee. And that's by John D. Rockefeller.
So you can develop your ability.
Yes.
Basically, to
if
deal
you
with people.
own a business or whatever, this is what we're talking about.
And a quote by William James, compared to what we ought to be, we are only half awake. We are making use of only a small part of our physical and mental resources. We possess powers that we habitually fail to use.
Right. And then Dr. John G. Hibbins says, education is the ability to meet life's situations. And Herbert Spencer says, the greater aim of education is not knowledge, but action.
Interesting.
So basically, he has 30 ways of dealing with people.
How to make friends and influence people. All right.
He does not work in a unionized environment. I want to say that straight up.
No, he does not.
Anyway, so the number one is, if you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. So he feels that criticism is futile because it puts a person on the defensive and usually makes them strive to justify themselves. Mm-hmm. And criticism is dangerous because it wounds a person's precious pride, hurts his sense of importance, and arouses resentment. And criticism does not make lasting changes.
So does he go into the difference between criticism and
feedback?
Being honest in your feedback?
He talks about that later on,
okay.
That we are to be honest with each other,
but
not in a negative, critical way. When I was telling teachers to write report cards, I always said, use the sandwich. Like, say something good about the child that they're good at, then add some next steps or things they need to improve, and then go back to saying something good, because you don't want what's good to get lost. And you definitely don't want to start out with criticism, because that never really works.
So any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain. And most fools do.
When dealing with people, remember, we are not dealing with creatures of logic. We're dealing with creatures of emotion, creatures bristling with prejudices and motivated by pride and vanity. So he gets right down to the basic.
To human nature.
And Abraham Lincoln's thing, he talks there's a lot of stories in the book too. So he says, with malice toward none and with charity for all. So a great man shows his greatness by how he treats little men. Instead of condemning people, let's try to understand them. Let's try to figure out why they do what they do. There's a lot more profitable and intriguing than criticism, and it breeds sympathy, tolerance, and kindness. So basically he's saying, if you get critical with people, then those around them are going to have sympathy for them.
Interesting.
And that kind of idea.
You use the expression with wagons.
Circle the wagons.
Circle the wagons.
Yeah, it's particularly in union.
They try to find a common enemy.
Yes.
Basically that way. Yeah.
And number two, he calls this the big secret of dealing with people. There is only one way under heaven to get anybody to do anything. Did you ever stop to think of that? Yes, just one way. And that is by making the other person want to do it. So,
well, that's easier said than done. But
the only way I can get you to do anything is by giving you what you want: health and a long life, food, sleep, financial freedom, afterlife, sexual gratification,
basically,
well-being.
Maslow's hierarchy
a feeling of importance. So people crave appreciation, and we are filled with ego.
Right.
So people need to be encouraged and appreciated, and people need incentive and praise. and people need to live under a spirit of approval. So we can't take people for granted, and confidence and self-esteem must be fed.
Right.
And sometimes I think, like when I was reading the book, I was thinking, okay, yeah, that's right for children, but shouldn't we outgrow some of that?
I don't know. Like, I mean,
But then he's also
you do
then he
hear
gets,
people talking of a toxic work environment where there's never approval of anything and it's all
Right.
just silence.
No, I
then
understand
There's the
that,
spirit
but-
of approval doesn't necessarily mean that there's tons of praise and all the
Yeah.
happy-go-lucky. It's just the mood and the climate needs to be
right. But he also says that flattery does more harm than good. It is counterfeit. It causes trouble. Flattery is telling the other person precisely what he thinks about himself.
Well, just when I remember
Don't
when
you like that line?
Yeah. Are you flattering me?
No,
I'm
but
kidding.
isn't that?
Yeah,
like,
it is.
It's you're telling the person what they already think about themselves.
I just remember how you felt when a principal came down and complimented you, and then the next thing you hear him saying the exact same words to a flaky teacher.
Yeah.
And then basically that was just flattery.
means nothing.
It means nothing.
So leave a friendly trail of little sparks of gratitude on your daily trips.
I think that makes sense. Just to,
Yeah.
little sparks of gratitude is a smile, a
Yeah.
thank you, a nod.
And give honest and sincere appreciation, not flattery.
Well,
So-
and to be honest, if I have nothing flattering or positive to say to people, I do say nothing.
Well, yeah, and I mean,
And I don't even
Nathan
smile
and
and
I
nod.
have had that conversation a few times because he'll go to say something kind of to his sister, and I said, if you don't have anything nice to say, you probably don't say anything at all. Oh yeah, he said. So number 3, he who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. Bait, and this line is bait the hook to suit the fish. You can influence people by talking about what they want and showing them how to get it.
Right.
So-
sometimes.
One secret of success lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that other person's angle as well as from your own. So the world is full of people who are grabbing and self-seeking. The rare individual who unselfishly serves others has an enormous advantage. There's not competition.
And self-expression, this is a quote by William Winter, self-expression is the dominant necessity of human nature.
So I get what they're saying. Like, if you just go all guns a-blazing and don't listen to their side of it, then you've got to try to
Right.
see things from another
Well, and
person's
I know we'll be doing
perspective.
customer service stories next podcast episode, but just thinking of the times that the person sounds sincerely like they understand your predicament.
Yes.
Even though they're just being paid to answer the phone, but the way they can talk compassionately
Yeah,
makes
and
a
listen.
difference. And listen,
Yeah.
makes a difference right away.
Number 4, do this and you will be welcome anywhere. You can make more friends by becoming interested in other people than you can by trying to get other people interested in you. If we merely try to impress people and get people interested in us, we will never have many true, sincere friendships.
Yeah. And that's true for any time you're going into a mixer with new people or you're being invited to a new friend's place, like all of that.
And then there's an Alfred Adler quote. It is the individual who is not interested in his fellow men who has the greatest difficulties in life and provides the greatest injury to others. It is from among such individuals that all human failures spring.
Well, what is the label for someone who is not interested in his fellow person? A narcissist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want others to like you? Do you want to develop real friendships? Do you want to help others at the same time you help yourself? Become genuinely interested in other people.
Yeah. So the 5th point, a simple way to make a good first impression is to smile.
And be pleasant.
Be pleasant. I'm smiling at the camera.
Oh, and action and feelings go together. By regulating actions, we can regulate feeling. Monitor your thoughts and your attitude. There's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And then he says, to think right is to create. Preserve a right mental attitude, courage, frankness, and good cheer.
I mean, he preserves frankness. So the phoniness part is,
Yeah.
he does.
No,
steer
a
away
man,
from
and
that.
then just in the service area, a man without a smiling face must not open shop. I thought that was
That's
funny.
a good quote.
So
The
number
sixth
6.
point.
yeah.
If you don't do this, then you're headed for trouble.
The average person wants you to remember their name. The name works magic when we deal with others.
Oh boy, I have such a hard time with names. However, I do now find if I call somewhere and they say so-and-so's answer, I will say good morning and their name. And
You
then
have to speak up.
Okay.
Because you're getting quiet.
I'm getting quieter. All right. So, but I do say their name and then continue with my request or question.
Yeah, no, it's much better. Number 7 is an easy way to become a good conversationalist. Listen intently with genuine interest. Stop what you are doing and listen. The most violent critic will frequently soften and be subdued in the presence of a patient, sympathetic listener. Do not be drunk with a sense of your own importance.
I like that quote.
Be a good conversationalist, attentive listener, interesting and interested. Ask questions, encourage the person to talk about themselves and their accomplishments.
All right. And next, how to interest people in you. Obviously, at some points, you need to do that for work or business or getting a job or building friends. The road to a person's heart is to talk about the things he or she treasures most. Make yourself agreeable.
And even when you're upset, like I'm even thinking of how, I start at least dealing with people when I'm trying to get something from them is to be agreeable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then, number
depending
9.
on the situation, it goes downhill, but
How to make people like you instantly. Radiate a little happiness and pass on a bit of honest appreciation without trying to get something out of someone.
and give them some chocolate.
Doesn't say that. Do something for someone when they can do nothing in return for you. Always make the other person feel important. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. So,
Sorry, I just was being funny.
yeah.
All right. Next, you can't win an argument. So you just have to accept that.
Always avoid the acute angle, which I thought was kind of neat. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still.
I wonder all these little sayings and poems, I've heard some of them. I wonder if he wrote them and then they've become famous.
I don't know. They were in the book.
He used some of other famous people, but he always attributed who it was. Hatred is never ended by hatred, but with love. A misunderstanding is never ended by an argument, but by tact, diplomacy, conciliation, and a sympathetic desire to see the other person's viewpoint.
How to keep disagreements from becoming arguments. Welcome disagreements. When two people always agree, one of them is not necessary. I like that.
Good.
Distrust your first instinctive impression and don't be defensive. Be calm, be careful, control your temper, listen first, give your opponent a chance to talk.
Look for areas of agreement, be honest, promise to think over your opponent's ideas and study them carefully, and thank your opponents for their interest.
Postpone action to give both sides time to think through the problem. Ask yourself hard questions like, could that other person actually be right? We need some of our politicians to read some of this stuff.
So.
Number 11, a sure way of making enemies and how to avoid it.
If you are going to prove anything, don't let anybody know it. To do so, that no one...
Do it so
that no one feels you're doing it. You cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him to find it within himself. That's a quote by Galileo.
Quit telling people they are wrong. I may be wrong. Let's examine the facts. Be diplomatic. It will help you gain your point. Show respect for the other person's opinions and never just come out and say, you're wrong.
Everybody on Facebook chat groups needs to read this.
Yeah. 12, if you're wrong, admit it. Be far too noble to blame others. Have the courage and character to admit you are wrong. Always be glad to learn what someone else is thinking on a subject. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically.
A drop of honey.
Number 13.
Make friends, not enemies, with a drop of honey. Gentleness and friendliness goes a long way, so it's best to begin in a friendly way.
And then number 14. pardon me, he calls the secret of Socrates. Don't begin by discussing the things on which you differ. A no response is the most difficult handicap to overcome. It doesn't pay to argue. It is more profitable and interesting to look at things from the other person's point of view and try to get the person to say yes. Get the other person to yes, tread softly, and ask Socratic questions.
Nice. 15. The safety valve in handling complaints. Listen patiently with an open mind. Let the other person do the talking.
Yeah. Right? Don't interrupt. Right?
And say, come on down.
Yeah.
Another time.
16, how to get cooperation. Let people discover things for themselves. People like to be consulted about their wisdom, wishes, wants, and thoughts. Let the other person feel that the idea is theirs.
A formula that will work wonders for you. Try to understand people. Success in dealing with people depends on a sympathetic grasp of the other person's viewpoint. See things through the other person's eyes, honestly looking from the other person's point of view. You have to do mental exercise sometime to do that.
Well, I mean, it takes you slowing everything down.
Yeah.
Right? And not just, while the other person's talking, you're not thinking of the response.
Right.
You're actually slowing down. Number 18 is called What Everybody Wants. I don't blame you one iota for feeling as you do. If I were you, I would undoubtedly feel just as you do. Be sympathetic with the other person's needs and desires.
19, and use an appeal that everybody likes. Assume the best of people and appeal to their nobler motives. Yeah, if you indicate that you believe that they are noble in their desires and wishes and actions, then they don't. Yeah, that's a better idea.
Yeah, like you're not just thinking the worst of people,
Yeah.
you're thinking the best. And number 20 says, the movies do it, TV does it, why don't you do it? Dramatize your ideas, the idea of using story.
Using story, absolutely.
Which is Seth Godin's.
Seth Godin and lots of other people.
Yeah.
21, when nothing else works, try this. Stimulate competition, the desire to excel. Throw down a challenge.
And I have done that when I've been trying to get something out of a company. I'll say, well, somebody else will. And a lot of times nowadays, they'll just say, okay, fine, go.
Yeah, especially cell phone companies, right?
they
We've
just-
said, oh, well, we'll change to this company because they're offering this. And they go, okay, fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's interesting.
It doesn't really seem to. It doesn't work.
Anyway, it's just interesting. Number 22, it is easier to listen to unpleasant things after we have heard some praise of our good points. Begin with praise and honest appreciation.
There's the
That's kind of
sandwich method.
yeah. And number 23, how to criticize and not be hated for it. Don't give someone compliments with but. Use the word and call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. Which I think is sad because
This is playing with their
adult,
fragile egos.
But these are the fragile egos that we deal with when we're in places of business and whatever. As leaders, which is a lot of what he's talking about, right?
Yeah. 24, talk about your own mistakes. Most people are susceptible to improvement.
That's funny, isn't it?
Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person.
And number 25, no one likes to take orders. Use phrases like, you might consider this. Do you think that would work? What do you think of this?
Gentle parenting.
Encourage cooperation, save pride, give people a say in the decision, and ask questions instead of giving direct orders.
Yeah. I think there's times that doesn't work, but for the most part.
Sometime. But
26, let the other person save face. Don't go out of your way to destroy ego.
which is true, right?
There's really no point in doing that.
No. And number 27, how to spur people to success. Praise even the slightest improvement. Point out specific reasons why and give examples, not general remarks or flattery. Praise from the heart. Praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. I love that statement. But it's like with little kids, right? Oh, I love the way I did that. I still do it with kids.
Yeah.
Where I say, oh, I love the way you know.
Cross that T.
Yeah.
Cross all your T's.
Yeah. But it's true. I love the way you
It's just sometimes harder to think about that
That
for
you have to-
adults when they're
adults.
getting a paycheck.
Yeah. Or just when you're like trying to get something out of someone who's you're paying for a service.
Right. But money doesn't make people reach their highest ideal.
No, it doesn't.
28. Give a dog a good name. Give people a fine reputation to live up to. It transforms them. So basically, it's kind of like labeling people
Yeah.
above where they are at, and then they work towards
Yeah.
achieving it.
Yeah. And number 29, make the fault seem easy to correct by using encouragement. I believe that's the way you get your best out of people. Okay, we messed this up, but all the fix. I think of the West
the whole
Wing.
new- well, the new start.
There's a thing in the West Wing where the young Republican lawyer is sent
yeah.
over, and she says, "This is easy. We can fix this in just like a heartbeat. Well, all we have to do is la la la," and they don't, and they end up getting fired. But she really did use this method.
Yeah.
You know, they made a mistake. This is so easy to correct. Like it's
Yeah.
nothing, and they screwed up. But that's how, you know, we can do all these things, I think, as well, and we still end up with people who
Yeah.
don't respond.
But I don't know. I guess, do we let ourselves get dragged down by
No,
them,
you
or do
continue.
we-
I think, you know, what he's saying is it doesn't always work out, but for you as a person, you're going to feel better about yourself and you're going to have more success if you follow these
Yes.
rather than going the other way.
Exactly.
It's not always going to work, but it's going to work better than just coming across negative.
And then the last one.
Is making people glad to do what you want, to change attitude and behavior, be sincere, know exactly what it is you want the other person to do, be empathetic, what does the other person want, and consider the benefits for the other person. Match those benefits to the other person's wants, and convey how the request benefits them as a person. So I think these are really good points, and they definitely can be like applied to business, right? To like
Yeah.
customer service and dealing with people from both sides of the
Also,
of the
as a
coin.
teacher to students.
Yes, and a bot like a leader
Yeah.
as well. So that is How to Win Friends and Influence People, a very old book, but I mean, I think
wisdom that's still current.
I think a lot of the newer writing on that sort of thing has come from
Yes.
this
From this.
From this. So on January 30th, we're
Every
actually
self-help
going to
business books and so.
yeah. Yeah, lots of them have come from these basic 30 points,
Yeah.
right? So on January 30th, we're going to talk about our top, and maybe borrow a few from some other people, but our top 10 service nightmares, and maybe 5 times when it actually worked.
So if in the next few days or first week from now, you can remember a customer service story you'd like to share with us, please email at No Room for Phonies, and we'll be happy to share your story.
It's noroomforphonies.com.
No Room for
with
Phonies.
a 4 in it.
Oh yeah, No Room for, number 4, phonies at gmail.com.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you just go on the blog, No Room for
Right.
Phonies, you can find,
contact
you can actually make a comment
Yeah.
too.
Oh, right.
So anyway, so that's it for Service Month, and we'll keep talking about that. And maybe like when we talk about our service nightmares, we'll kind of come back to how it could have gone differently had either party, even ourselves, gone about things a little bit different. So it should be interesting to kind of use this framework to talk about some service things
For sure.
going forward. So thanks for joining us. How to Win Friends and Influence People, books worth reading. No Room for Phonies.
Good night.